Hi folks, my name is Jaime Corona and today I'll be talking about intrusive thoughts. What are intrusive thoughts? Well, intrusive thoughts are those little pesky thoughts that come out of nowhere. It's like getting hit with a left hook out of nowhere and you're like, geez, where did that come from? Well, with the intrusive thoughts, these are very random and typically they're not good thoughts. You know, a lot of folks will have intrusive thoughts about as they're driving and they're going across a bridge, they may say, well, what if I accidentally turn the wheel and I go off the bridge? And so it comes in a wide variety of different types of thoughts, and then like I said, it's very random. There is no specific time it's going to hit you. It could hit you at work, it could hit you at school, it could hit you as you're visiting loved ones. And so what's very important about intrusive thoughts is that you recognize them, you understand what intrusive thoughts are. Now don't get confused with intrusive thoughts versus distorted thoughts. Those are two separate issues, or two separate things, and I'll go over in another video with you as to what is distorted thoughts. So going back to intrusive thoughts, just keep in mind this. They're very random. They come out of nowhere and they're pretty bad sometimes. I went to a seminar one time and it was full of therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors, social workers. And I remember in this big old seminar, the presenter asked, who in here has had intrusive thoughts? Now, most of us as mental health workers were kind of hesitant to answer that. And little by little you would see the hands going up. And so by the time you know it, mostly all the hands were raised, acknowledging that they have had, or I have had, intrusive thoughts. And sometimes these intrusive thoughts can be very embarrassing. You know, what we think about, it's out of character, out of the ordinary. So once again, it's very, very important to understand what an intrusive thoughts are. Now, how do you combat intrusive thoughts? Well, I don't know if there's a way to combat it, but you can make sure that you don't validate it. Because once you validate an intrusive thought, then what happens, it could turn into fear, anxiety, phobia, OCD tendencies, and things like that. So you want to eliminate that. So the first process is to say, okay, what is an intrusive thought? Was this intrusive? Was there any facts to this? You know, if you had a thought about a teacher, for example, and you said, well, that teacher never, you know, likes me, she hates me, and you just have all these thoughts. Well, the difference between that thought and an intrusive thought, partial is true about that thought because you have a teacher. Now the part that she hates you may not be true, so that falls under distorted thoughts. So let's go back into intrusive. Once again, intrusive is very random, very rare, very just out of the ordinary. And I'll share an experience with you about my own experience with intrusive thoughts. Went to go visit my daughter as she introduced my little grandson into the world. And I remember at the hospital, she handed me the baby. She was, here, Dad, you want to hold the baby? And of course I said yes. As I took my little grandson, just born, I had an intrusive thought. And my intrusive thought, what happens if I drop the baby? And just a flood of fear came over me. So at that point, I actually validated. I didn't say, oh, that's intrusive. I'm not going to drop this baby. This baby means the world to me. At that point, when I validated, then some more fear came over me. So I looked around and I found the safest chair to sit on. And I sat there and I crossed my leg and I made sure I held that baby, you know, where there was no chance that I could have dropped the baby. So what happened? I validated that intrusive thought. And so on top of the validation, fear came upon me. And then I was reacting towards that fear. So what you have to do is not validate it. Identify it as number one. You know, you say, okay, is this intrusive or this is distorted? Okay, well, this is intrusive. There's no way in the world I would do such a random, you know, thing that this thought just popped into my head. No way. I've heard of intrusive thoughts such as people are in the kitchen, they see a knife and they think, what if I get the knife and stab my mom? What if I get the knife and hurt my loved one? Those are intrusive thoughts. Okay, so number one, don't validate. Well, number one, I apologize. Number one is to identify if it's intrusive or if it's distorted. Okay? Once you've identified if it is intrusive, then don't validate it. Okay? Categorize it. Okay, this is an intrusive thought. I'm not going to deal with this. You push it out. You're not suppressing, you're getting rid of that. You're taking away that from entering your mind, your brain, or as I refer to as your Google. Okay? So always remember, identify, and then once you've identified it as intrusive, push it away. Don't validate it, because you don't want it to become something more than just an intrusive thought. Be sure to send me any questions you have about intrusive thoughts, or share some of your experiences with intrusive thoughts. And if there's any way else you have questions for me, please post them below. And I will be seeing you on the video on distorted thoughts. Thank you.